Hello, fellow humans of all sizes, shapes, and whatevers. I am Dr. Jim Porter, licensed mental health counselor in Gainesville, Florida. This video is going to have a little bit of philosophy or spirituality, how you ever hope to call it, but this is also one of those many videos that talks about the Tao Te Jing that therapists and other people are putting out there. It's got concepts of Wu Wei and the Tao and Yin Yang that you're going to see out there in lots of videos, lots of books, lots of writings. Everybody, to me, these books, all literature, all reading you do, you filter in and you interpret, and it means something different to you than it means to everybody else. Things like the Tao Te Jing and poetry, even more so, because not only does it come from another language, and there are very many translations of it, but also these to me are the kind of things you look at, and what you're getting out of it reflects a bit of yourself. Well, feel free to watch my video, but then go read the Tao Te Jing and other books in the Taoist collection and decide what it means for you. And really, how I've started to come up with stuff is when I go out in life and I'm doing something that's really causing myself more agony or causing myself less agony, it seems. That I sometimes reflect back on the Tao Te Ching because it's short and I've read it a bunch of times, and what that helps me consider is how much. Let me go to the title of it so that I can give you the accurate title of the one I'm reading. That allows me to reflect on it based on life experience. And I really believe life teaches you a lot more than any writing. But you know that people have tried to create knowledge and write it down. And human beings will probably always be doing that. And it does have value. So I have read this one several times, and I've got some other collections with different kinds of translations in it. This one says Tao Te Jing, or the Tao and its characteristics, and it's spelt different ways every time you look at it, by Lao Tse, or Lao Tzu, or Lao Tzu, and translated by James Legge. The reason I look, so you got the Tao Te Jing, or the Tao and its characteristics by Lao Tzu, and translated by James Legge, right? Thank you very much. So now you know where I'm referring from. I have one or two quotes from it, and that's it, because I would have linked in my video way too much in the time before I made my video if I didn't. I just like to spit these out, so here I come. I'm going to start spitting anyway. The concepts I'm going to talk about from my point of view are the Wu Wei and the Tao. I probably will title my video based on something that's down deeper in this. This shouldn't take very long. Wu Wei and the Tao. A, I'm going to define them, but first I'm going to give an intro. A, your actions are not the sole determiners of your results. So you can do something to achieve a goal. It doesn't mean you're going to achieve a goal. You can do everything right, but you cannot control results. Ultimately, all activity, apparent causes, and apparent results are outcomes of the way things work. So this is kind of spiritual. Ultimately, all your activity, causes, and effects and results are outcomes of the way things work. You are not in 100% control, but you are part of the process. You do contribute to the way things work by your actions, and they can be very powerful. But letting go of results, in my opinion, is a big part of Wu Wei. Wu Wei is translated often as not doing, non-action, not forcing, and also letting go of results. The way things work, like I alluded to back there, is called the Tao. It's also just called the Way, and it's called a lot of things. Real quick couple of quotes here. Chapter 2, verse 4, the way I read it in my copy, all things spring up. There is not one which declines to show itself. They grow, and there is no claim made for their ownership. They go through their processes, and there is no expectation of a reward for the results. The work is accomplished, and there is no resting in it as an achievement. When they say in the book, all things spring up, I think that means all phenomena have their own natural springing. This is about the way of nature. It just happens. You're an outcropping of nature. You just happened. So it's kind of beautiful. In a way, everything's fine because everything's going the way it's supposed to be. I know in times of grief and loss, this is not an appropriate thing to just tell people. It's actually, again, trying to over control how they feel, trying to be too philosophical about something that's deeply felt. We will talk about emotions very soon. Another quote, chapter 51, verse 1, all things are produced by the Tao, by the way things work, and nourished by its outflowing operation. They receive their forms according to the nature of each and are completed according to the circumstances of their condition. This is even much clearer about there's a way, a force, a God that really is in charge, but still you are an agent in this process, and you were created by that process or that God or that deity. Or if you're very like a materialist monist, just the laws of nature. So I talked about power and control in there a little bit, but I'm going to go straight into power and control, first starting with power. I define power as the power to do something, to take an action, to choose your own action. There is no power over the effect your action has, but there is influence, there is correlation. Correlation does not automatically mean causality. You can see one thing happen and then something else happen after it, and you can't necessarily say that this first thing caused the second thing. You can say they go with each other a lot. And one of the paradigms of what we say correlation does not mean causation. Correlation means they seem to tend to go together statistically, but this one may have caused this one. Physics is starting to play around with the idea that there isn't time as separate before and after, that all times exist at the same time, weird stuff. But it's not just that this one could have caused this one. That a third element could have caused both of them. So of course they're going to correlate, right? So there is no power over the effect your action has, but still take your actions as you deem. I like to say the goal is there for the method. So you set a goal, a dream in your life, and that gets you up doing things to accomplish that dream. But more importantly, that dream has created activity in you. So you're getting up and doing stuff. I think that's amazing. Okay. Also, power is the ability to choose your next action. And you don't even always have absolute choice over your action. You've seen that going on in your life. Something around your neurology makes you do habits you don't wish to do, makes you eat stuff you wish you didn't eat, all kinds of stuff like that. So sometimes emotions and impulses win out, and sometimes they're supposed to. Like when a sudden intuitive action that you didn't even think of saves your life or somebody else's life. But there are, positives and negatives to impulsive action. I believe Wu Wei is not impulsive action, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Power and control. Let's talk about control. Control means control over acting on impulse. So this to me is more of self-restraint, self-refraining. But you got to be careful how tightly restrained you make yourself. Control means control over acting on impulse, over one's responses to impulse. It's the ability to not obey one's impulses or emotions. You'll still have the emotions and impulses. Those are going to come up. It's going to be very uncomfortable. Thoughts in your head are telling you, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. That's impulses and emotions. They can be there without you doing what they say tell you to do. I'll talk about a specific disorder toward the end. But if you're not obeying them, they might evolve. So if you're not obeying your impulses and something's telling me, oh, I got to get up and scramble around my house and do a million things before I get there, then I just sit there and let my body say that over and over again, and I breathe. After a while, those impulses and emotions can evolve because you did not reward them by obeying them. One cannot and should not try to control one's emotions. I really think that's like trying to wrestle the weather into submission. Let your body do its impulsive emotions, impulsive thoughts, let them do it. Pay attention to it. That's mindfulness. However, there is yeah, there's no healthy ability to choose your next emotions, I don't think. I mean, to some degree there might be, but I really think most of the time you're doing violence to your system. You've had plenty of people when you were growing up telling you which emotions were appropriate and inappropriate, acceptable and unacceptable. That's a form of violence and violation that all people do to children. The society does it to children. And so it's time to let loose from trying to choose your emotions and realize that they're all acceptable. So, by trying to force what you want to happen, you fail to allow what you want to happen. You fail to allow luck or blessings or nature to take their courses. So, allow what you want to happen. Take your action. Try to hold responsibility for just your own action. That's plenty or more than plenty to deal with. And then allow the outcomes to be what they are and learn from those outcomes. When you see something you want to happen, it's not always going to happen, even if you're doing all the right things. This is true of events in the world and in your direct environment and relationships, but it's also true of your emotions and impulses. So let go of how other people behave in your relationships. Let go of how you can control politics, the world. Let go of even how your attempt to paint your house. That's a very direct thing in your direct environment. It might not come out exactly the way you wanted it to, but it's amazing. Ultimately, generally, things work out. By the way, things work out, includes the fact that all things die. I know that that's probably the primary fear we all have, but it's also one of the only things we can say we all have in common. So there's something very beautiful, and there's a lot we don't know about the way things are supposed to work. But one thing we do know is apparently all people die. So these impulses and emotions will become less of what you want if you try to force them. The best you can do is to allow them and evolve as they will. I can't repeat that enough, but that's probably the last time I'll repeat it. So take your next chosen action and refrain from undesired responses to impulses and just allow. I'm going to say something that'll probably make the title of this video. Wu Wei is not flow. Okay, I just want to say that. I just want to, I mean, I don't know. I think that is like a very catchy thing to say because I hear Wu Wei, the power of flow. A lot of genius people in their books and in their videos are saying Wu Wei, the philosophy of flow. Wu Wei is not flow, at least not necessarily. What people call flow, they're talking about sports athletes, people who become very good at something. Athletes go in there and martial artists and everything and say, I've learned this so well, I get a flow with it. Again, that is not necessarily Wu Wei at all. What people call flow is most often a series of connected impulses brought together by life's accidental training, the way people raised you, or intentional practice like in basketball or juggling or driving or playing a musical instrument. These have been practiced to the point of becoming automatic. So again, automatic is basically the opposite of mindfulness. We can appear to let go and be effortless when we're doing automatic actions, but it is mindlessness, not mindfulness. It is the automatic nervous system taking over, autonomic nervous system taking over. The autonomic nervous system means it's autonomous, like a different person within you. Quite often, that's why you feel so frustrated that you do the things you don't want to do. Don't do the things you do want to do, and engage in habits that you've been trying to quit for years and years and years. You need to build a relationship with that autonomic nervous system, but in certain situations, it's supposed to be taking over. In many situations, most of your day, it's taking over when it shouldn't be, instead of your conscious self being in charge, you deciding what you're going to think and do next. In a way, when you are doing what they call flow, when you're in these automatic processes, you're allowing your conscious mind to do one thing while your body does another for you. So it's possible that an NBA superstar could be racking up three-pointers at the same time he's wondering if he left the iron on at home. The problem is that this type of learning can result in very bad activities like when your body decides you should yell and scream at someone, though your conscious mind in no way had that intention. Similarly, this so-called flow is what is occurring when you keep engaging in a habit that you wish you would be able to quit. You're not alone. This happens to everybody. That's why Lao Tzu wrote his work, because he knows everybody has to go through it, and you have to let go of the things you don't have control over them, even as you try to learn to build a relationship that allows more possibility that what you want will happen. So this is when you're too often eating whatever you wish you would not be eating at all. So it's like you're too often eating that thing you wish you were not eating at all. You actually wish you were not eating it while you're eating it. It happens to so many of us. Wu Wei is often when you stop that type of flow and deal with the discomfort of not gauging in some of your best learned activities, your most learned activities, your least desired habits and tendencies. And that is part of the secret. That's why I say we don't try to control our emotions. We try to tolerate and live with them. Because most of the time when you're making some growth, you're doing something that has been uncomfortable for you to try to do, or not doing something that is very difficult emotionally, very uncomfortable in your body to not do. You'll learn to live with that discomfort, and after a while, you will be free from that form of self-oppression. So, Wu Wei is also, to me, refraining from scrambling. When you take the courage to pause between activities, so this to me is a not doing, right? Wu Wei is non-action, non-forcing, non-striving. These are the many lingual interpretations from the ancient Chinese to the modern Chinese to the modern English that have come and filtered into my reading. When you take the courage to pause between activities, now this is different. This isn't necessarily refraining from activities. That means you're writing your masterwork of a book and you think you need to write 20 hours a day and pound it out and get it done by next week so that you won't forget what you wanted to write. We have a lot of impulses that tell us to do stuff without pausing, just to keep going and going and going. It is rewarded by the way America does business and other countries do business. When you take the courage to pause between activities, perhaps in the middle of what seems like flow, you are practicing Wu Wei. So Wu Wei is not necessarily flow. It can become flow accidentally. And being more conscious of what you would like to do next. You're doing something, pause. Think about what your body mind is telling you you might want to do next. Decide if that is accurate. Make a conscious decision, and you will feel a lot less like you're scrambling through your day. If you do not sometimes pause, you will often be thinking of all the tasks you want to do all day. And in the middle of one, you will often move from task to task impulsively as you are reminded of one task while engaging in another. If you do not sometimes pause, you will often move from task to task impulsively as you are reminded of one task while engaging in another. This is not flow. This is torrents. You know, a torrent, a torrential river, a torrential downpour. This is not flow. This is turbulence. This is churning and splashing and what people do when they panic in the water. This is not flow. If you pause in the middle of your daily scramble, you will notice that you are not breathing, that your heart is beating too quickly for the task engaged in, and that your mind has been running all over the place. This is not like a bird gliding on the wind, but like a small bird tossed around by a hurricane. In my experience, this act of pausing is often excruciating because we become aware of the panic we have been ignoring. That is why so few people stay on this path. So if you feel this discomfort when trying to pause and become conscious, realize that discomfort probably means you're on the right path. If you feel this discomfort when trying to pause and become conscious, perhaps allow an emotion. Allow the emotion, allow the discomfort. If you feel this discomfort when trying to pause and become conscious, perhaps cry. Perhaps cry. That is flow. Moving on. An ironic sounding statement, which a lot of people like to create to sound wise. I just did it because it's kind of cool sounding. The goal is not the goal. The goal is not the goal. I already told you the outcome, right? Is not something that's completely under your control, but the goal is just a tool. The purpose of a goal is really just to get you up out of bed and into action, doing something. It often doesn't matter whether the goal is realized, whether the goal is actualized. I want to stop here and say, all this manifesting stuff, if you put something out into the universe, it will bring that same thing right back to you. That is a power and control fantasy. Okay, so I understand the word manifesting could mean a lot of things, but you're going to watch a lot of people that say stuff like you put out certain energy and that energy just came right back to you. Some people might even call it karma. But the truth is, I think this is a misunderstanding of concepts of karma, and I also think it's a dream people are trying to sell you because it makes money. I really would love to be able to sell dreams like that and explode into the public consciousness and make tons of dough off that. But there's a part of me that would feel crappy pretending that I know from experience that when I put out goodness, goodness will come back to me. No, I think the reason I want to put out goodness is because I just want to choose to behave well, to do good things for people, and then see what happens. Basically, I think there is some effect of your behaviors, and a lot of that can return to you, of course. But it's like rolling the dice. It's a more healthy way of gambling because you're actually doing stuff in the universe that means something. So the purpose of the goal is really just to get you out of bed, into action, doing something. It often doesn't matter whether the goal is realized. It's really about not being paralyzed in anxiety or dissociating into intellectualization or staying depressed. It's a great hedge to have a goal and do things that you think might get you that goal. In this process of getting out and doing things, you will learn life. And your goal will often, therefore, change. I think I'm toward the end here. I'm going to do some more on Wu Wei. So Wu Wei also involves testing your fears. Amen. We try to force, to overpower, to control out of a fear of what might happen if we don't. We try to overpower, control out of fear of what might happen if we don't overpower and control the situation. Some of the people you think are the most ugly, icky, violent, aggressive, powerful, manipulating, controlling people in your sphere, in the power sector or whatever of the economy or whatever, these are not people who feel in control. I'm just saying that from my point of view, but many people who I've seen are control freaks, whatever, never fear in control. It's that constant threat to lose power, to be powerless and completely out of control that creates this constant attempt to control. So there, I said that we are controlling out of a fear of what might happen if you don't. But a fear is a fantasy unless it has been tested and proven to bear out. So I don't say every fear you have in your mind, just say, that's phony baloney, life is perfect, nothing's a problem, and I never have to worry about anything. No, a fear is a fantasy unless it has been tested and proven to bear out. It's something going on in your mind, fueled by your emotions. So testing it out in Wu Wei, you test your fears by refraining from action that you are afraid to refrain from, but that you believe you would like to refrain from for some reason or another. And then see if that feared outcome actually applies. If that feared outcome actually happens, stop what you're doing to that seems to be associated with you're trying to self-protect against phantom fears. You've heard this one before. Fear is an acronym. Fantasies, experienced as reality. So look at your deepest fears and start to assume that some of them have not been tested, and realize they may not be true at all, and that you have to take a risk, you have to roll the dice of not obeying those fears and see if that feared outcome actually happens. It may happen, it may not. Either way, we learn. I believe you will find that many of your fears had no basis at all. I've learned that personally. It's amazing when you hit realization later on, another realization, what you could have been free from all your life, but really you couldn't have, because you're on the noble path of growth and liberation. So you will find that many of your fears, I believe, will turn out to have been false alarms. The way fear fantasies start to drop out over the course of life, this way is the fear fantasies start to just drop out over the course of your life because you're testing them by inaction. So you see how this is not some mysterious philosophical religious book, the Tao Te Jing. It's really turns out to be very common sense. So as you try to let go, I want to try another ironic phrase on you: letting go of letting go. Right? It's this thing. Like, you just got to know, I get frustrated. I still get out of control. I still try to overpower. And of course, you're saying, yeah, Jim, we never really thought you were that big of a deal in the first place. Well, good, because this path is full of ups and downs. All of life is full of ups and downs. That doesn't go away. So think about letting go of letting go. As you make progress on your ability to relax and let things happen and have the courage to take action anyway, apply the lack of control even to that process of learning to control your own actions, of learning to tolerate emotions, of learning to let go of outcomes. Be patient with your efforts to learn to let go, because you're not in control of how fast and consistent that process will be. You are a complex thing, and it's going to take you a lot of effort, rest, progress, loss of progress, and time. That's why life is worth living, because this stuff takes time, and there's always another gift somewhere down the line around the corner. This is why we're alive, I think, for this experience. I can't control my dog barking. I don't know if you just heard her do that, but this is why we're alive, I think, to engage on this path. It's natural to be frustrated, and it's frustrating to be natural, but natural is what we are. I am really closer to the end now, and mindfulness and OCD is what I'm going to talk about. I decided somewhere, as I thought of a few friends of mine that have diagnosable OCD, and also where I have been OCD. OCD, there's a lack of attention. I haven't really been OCD, by the way. There's a very strict definition to OCD. So I realize a lot of you out there suffer with the very extreme form of OCD, which is obsessions, which are unpleasant thoughts that continue to obtrusively intrude repeatedly in your brain that you don't like. Compulsions are behaviors that you keep doing that are thought to intend to relieve your stress, and they're self-rewarding. So like hand washing is intended to be a good behavior, but it turns into a compulsion where you can't seem to control yourself from doing it. There's also something called compulsive thinking, compulsive thoughts. Those are also intended to provide relief, but that relief they cause creates this feedback loop where this so-called pleasant thought keeps repeating in your mind, or a song you love or whatever, or a prayer. Things, or counting things all the time. These do because there's a little reward system going on there. So again, you can see how this is impulsive, this is recursive, this is your autonomic nervous system trying to get temporary rewards, but causing long-term problems. So in OCD, a lot of people think this is people who are like attention to detail, oh my gosh, this person's so organized, they're OCD. No, I really don't think OCD is true attention to detail, because I use attention as a synonym for mindfulness. In OCD, there is a lack of attention, a lack of mindfulness of detail, though it seems there is an excessive attention to detail. So we're doing things specifically to alleviate and avoid discomfort with our OCD reactions. So attention to detail, on the other hand, may help relieve the OCD actions and thoughts. Attention to detail would be paying attention to that discomfort you're trying to avoid without distracting yourself from it, without avoiding it. The best thing to do during these situations is probably do some nice breathing. That won't necessarily distract you from the thoughts and the impulses to do those certain behaviors. But you're allowing yourself not to restrict your breathing while you are paying attention to those horrible fears and feelings. So this is mindfulness. In mindfulness, there is attention to detail to a degree. You're paying attention to those processes that you would otherwise be trying to quash down, to extinguish, to push away, to snuff out, right? You watch what you're doing because that is attentiveness. And attentiveness is a greater part of being there for life. So that all this icky stuff we're trying to get away from, everybody's got it, and it is life. This emotional blah, 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 and these thoughts and stuff like that, I don't know if they're ever supposed to stop. You know, I understand that some people say they clear their mind and they stop all thought when they do meditation. A lot of them are doing something that's really called dissociation. They're checking out and they don't realize they're doing that. There are some times I think when you allow, sometimes everything calms down like a nice glassy pond. And so you're not noticing thought, but you are noticing something, maybe unity with all things, maybe a sense of trust, maybe a sense of tranquility, but it is not just forcing your thoughts to stop. So attentiveness, it can be its own reward if it's true attentiveness. It's not trying to block your mind and then see what happens. Please take my word for it. Blocking your mind is like pushing down a negative thought, and that creates obsessions. We used to say do thought stopping and what do we call it? Cognitive behavioral therapy. And now we realize that can just create obsessions. So why is there a little wu-wei in our lives? Because we are addicted to distraction. Okay, OCD is not the only form of it. We are addicted to distraction. Our most important and valued and applauded activities from day to day are mostly a series of distractions. It's rewarded by our cultures, by our economy, and that sort of thing, and by our fears, and by the fact that we were powerless as children, and we kind of had to respond almost impulsively to what people told us to do, or what we watched them do and we would mimic as a young person's behavior. But when we get more and more into our adulthood, we're allowed to pause, we're allowed to not be distracted and live with what's going on. When painful things happen in our lives, we start to become addicted to distraction from our uncomfortable emotions, from the memories that accompany our uncomfortable emotions, from the expectations that accompany our uncomfortable emotions. The expectations. These uncomfortable emotions, memories, and expectations cannot harm us. Anxiety cannot harm you. Panic cannot harm you. All the freaky expectation, loss fears, the fear of loss, the fear that your expectations won't come out, that your dreams won't come true, all this stuff, if you're pausing and allowing it, it cannot hurt you. If you're trying to run away from it, you see how I've described how it can cause a lot of problems. So if I can fit in one last thing, you've seen the Yin Yang symbol, and I know that's like kind of a big thing we understand about Taoism, is that opposites flow out of each other. So I think a lot of times life seems ironic because we don't fully understand life. So opposites do seem to flow out of each other. Or if we don't allow those opposites to flow out of each other, we fight, and we get the opposite of what we want. When really we could realize that there's a cycle, there's a circle. Life creates death, death creates life. Good weather creates weather we don't like. Weather we don't like creates the weather we do like. So one last pause and I'll be done. Thank you so much.